The personality is a costume. We naturally think of ourselves first, not others. We are trained to consider how others feel and what they need, but doing this doesn't come naturally to the ego. The ego's tendency is to start every sentence with I. Even when it's talking with another, it's all about I. Even when the conversation seems to be about the other, I comes in every chance it gets. Conversations between egos are dominated by I. I like, I don't like, I want, I don't want, I will, I won't. When we relate to others, we not only relate from I, but we also relate to the I of the other. We try to find out what the ego dressed up as that particular personality is like. We want to know how he or she sees life and what he or she wants, likes, has been in the past, and dreams of being in the future. This, we think, is who that person is. We don't realize that all these things only scratch the surface of who that person is. We mistake the persona, including the appearance, the personality, and the ego for who someone is. These are parts of who someone is, but they're really more of a costume than anything of substance or significance. We make the persona, personality, and ego more important than they are, as if they are who someone is. This is so obvious once it's pointed out, and yet, because we're programmed to think this way, we're taken in by the exterior, the costume. We're told to look beyond appearances, but usually that implies seeing beyond appearances to the personality. However, how people behave and react, their personality, is still part of the costume. The personality has no more depth or significance in terms of who they are than their physical appearance. We think we're being less superficial by loving people for their personality rather than their appearance, but the personality is just more programming. People have no more control over it than they do over their appearance. The personality is not the real self or essence, although the personality can be a vehicle for essence. More often, the personality is a vehicle for the ego. Whether it is a vehicle for essence or the ego, it's still just a vehicle, a means for interfacing with the world. The personality itself has nothing to do with who we really are. It's merely a useful tool in this physical reality. The personality helps bring about the lessons and experiences we chose before coming into this life, and it may help our soul accomplish what it set out to do. The personality is not who we are, and in most people it reflects essence only occasionally. For the most part, the personality is expressed by the ego, and only occasionally by essence. As we evolve, essence is increasingly expressed through the personality, since that's the goal of spiritual evolution. Every personality is unique. Think about that. What an amazing thing it is that there isn't anyone, nor will there ever be anyone exactly like you. Your appearance, personality, talents, circumstances, life purpose, and current and past experiences are entirely unique. No one else is designed to have the experiences you are having through your body, mind, and personality. This makes your life very precious, and it makes every other life very precious too, regardless of how another may seem to us. Even the seemingly lowliest or most evil person serves evolution by having an entirely unique experience, one that will never come again. For this reason alone, all life is precious. This uniqueness is lovable. You can learn to feel love for anyone by loving their uniqueness. That's what the oneness or God finds lovable, and when you are aligned with essence, so do you. By choosing to look beyond the qualities you don't like or respect in others to their uniqueness, you can experience love in their presence. but you have to want to experience love before you'll choose to do this. The ego rejects differences. The ego doesn't want to love as much as it wants to be right, and it tries to be right by judging others. It gets pleasure in feeling superior by judging others. That pleasure is the trade-off the ego gets for love. It's not nearly as pleasurable as the joy of loving, but it's safer, and the ego generally prefers safety to love. When safety depends on love, the ego must choose love, but it prefers judgment. Judgment is the easiest thing to do because it's the most natural thing for the ego. It's also easy because judgment is based on differences, and differences are everywhere. Life doesn't duplicate itself, so everything and everyone is an opportunity for judgment. Every difference is an opportunity for the ego to define itself as superior in some way. It pulls out a rule, conditioning it has stored away, and applies it to someone as a means of declaring that person inferior. Doesn't she know any better than to feed her kids that junk? What kind of person would park like that? How could anyone be that stupid to pay so much for that? The ego takes great pleasure in such declarations because they make it feel right and therefore superior. Notice how much pleasure you get when you think you're right about something, especially when you're sure you're right. The ego doesn't actually have to be right to feel superior. It just has to believe it's right to get this good feeling. Therefore, an enormous amount of pretending to know and pretending to be right goes on to uphold this feeling of superiority. We spin our judgments into stories to make us feel superior. I'd never assume someone would take care of me like that prima donna does. I know that relationship will never work. He's too fickle. I know what it takes to get the job done, and he isn't smart enough. We define ourselves and our values, and assume others are wrong for defining themselves and their values differently. We assume that being different is wrong, bad, or at least inferior, without realizing that the standard by which we judge others is our own flawed conditioning. Rather than examining our conditioning, we would rather make ourselves superior because of it, or try to change others to be like us. The ego doesn't allow people to be different from itself, which is why the ego has trouble with relationships. The ego doesn't celebrate differences in relationships. It seeks to annihilate, or at the very least repudiate the differences, unless they are differences the ego admires. Some differences are okay with the ego because they're in keeping with its aspirations. For example, someone who isn't strong or rich or educated or well-dressed may befriend those who are because he or she wants to become like them. However, only essence is willing to consider differences as just what they are, without putting a positive or negative value on them. Unlike the ego, essence sees differences as an obvious and natural part of relationships, and something that enriches experience. The ego, on the other hand, feels differences between people are problematic and need to be done away with, or it simply rejects people who are different. Many never come to know those who are very different from themselves because of this tendency to discount or ignore them. People move in circles with those who are like-minded and of a similar class, and rarely travel outside their circle. The wealthy hang out with the wealthy. Beer drinkers hang out with beer drinkers. Pot smokers hang out with pot smokers. Fundamentalists hang out with fundamentalists. New Agers hang out with New Agers. That way their values are reinforced and supported, and there's less need to question who they are and how they choose to live. The ego doesn't like to have its self-image and lifestyle challenged by those who see things differently. Essence loves differences. Essence enjoys differences because they make life what it is. Differences make the world go around. They create a variety of perspectives, experiences, possibilities, and opportunities. They stretch us and cause us to look more deeply, beneath the persona, the personality, and the ego, to what's living the life. If we're to get along with those who are very different from us, we have to find some commonality. In the absence of any commonality is essence, which is what unites us all. We are united by the fact that there's no real separation, only apparent separation. It's an illusion that we are separate at all. There's only one being, God, pretending to be many, all dressed up in infinite guises. This being is immensely enjoying the costume party, and the more diverse and interesting the characters are, the better. There's obviously no room for sameness in creation, because sameness just doesn't exist, not even in leaves or snowflakes. What there is room for is diversity. That's Essence's point of view, but it's not the ego's. The ego's lack of appreciation for diversity puts it at odds with life. At every turn it opposes life because it opposes diversity and differences. That's what we are here to unlearn. We're here to overcome this aversion to life as it is, and to learn instead to embrace its unpredictability and diversity. We're not here to shape and mold it to our view, but to shape our view to it. Our view of life must change, not life itself. But that kind of transformation comes only through life itself, which teaches us that we can't have our way. Rather, we must let life have its way with us. Letting life have its way. Only from oneness, from essence, are we able to let there be two different people, because oneness likes two-ness. After all, it created diversity for its enjoyment and evolution. Oneness takes joy in two-ness, because two-ness is interesting and unpredictable, unlike oneness. And unpredictability is fun and challenging. Why do we like games of skill? Because the outcome is unpredictable, and that's fun. We usually don't think of unpredictability as being fun, because that isn't what the ego considers fun. It likes predictability, because it favors safety and security over fun. Sometimes unpredictability turns out badly, but part of the fun for essence is turning that negative into something else, making lemonade out of lemons. From the standpoint of essence, anything has the potential for enjoyment. Anything can produce joy for essence. Nothing is too difficult or too horrific to be joyous. Unbelievable, you say? It makes no sense to the mind that something horrific is capable of producing joy, even in the midst of it, and yet joy exists in every moment. That's the truth, whether the ego accepts that or not. Even in very wonderful moments, the egoic mind makes it difficult to experience joy because of what it says about whatever's happening. What we tell ourselves about whatever's happening has the potential to either sap the joy out of the moment or drop us into the joy that is there. Any judgment, complaint, negative evaluation, or resistance to the moment causes us to recoil from it, and that's painful and joyless. We suffer when we divorce ourselves from the moment because the moment, even difficult or challenging moments, is where true joy and happiness exist. Even the moment of death, either ours or someone else's, which we usually think of as the ultimate in bad moments, can be blissful if we're present to it. Fearfully anticipating death isn't pleasant, but if we're doing that, we aren't in the moment. Instead, we're in our head and agreeing with the egoic mind, which resists that moment just like every other one. The beauty of the moment is difficult for the ego to see. It doesn't perceive beauty as much as its ideas about the moment, which nearly always oppose something, if not everything, about the moment. The ego is programmed to find fault with whatever's going on. It finds fault with people, and it finds fault with experiences. The ego is programmed this way because this provides the grist for our evolution. Saying no to whatever is creates the suffering that eventually causes us to choose more wisely, and learning to choose wisely is what spiritual evolution is all about. We are programmed to choose unwisely, so that we discover the wisdom of choosing otherwise. In this way, we discover love. We learn to love as a result of this programming. We don't come into life knowing how to love. We have to learn how to love. That's the setup, and the ego doesn't like this either. But no matter. Liking or not liking something is irrelevant to the unfolding of life. Have you noticed? Life unfolds as it will, regardless of whether we like what's happening or not. By opposing life, we eventually learn this truth. We learn how impotent our opposition to life is, and that this opposition causes only suffering. What's left is choosing to agree with life, to love whatever is, no matter what that looks like. That is the secret to life. It's both simple and difficult. Oneness likes challenge, so something being difficult isn't a problem for it. It welcomes the difficult challenge of waking up out of the egoic state of consciousness. That has been Oneness's intention all along. And the suffering caused by our inability to make life turn out as we would like is how Oneness accomplishes its goal. Our desire to stop suffering eventually leads to our saying no to the ego and choosing love instead.